Paul, we're back right in the middle of a game week. Brighton about to kick off in 40 minutes. 5-3, Fulham and Leicester as well. It's not very often we stream live during the games actually happening. How was your Sky weekend?
Yeah, I would say it's average game week, but I've still managed to hold on to first and second. I just feel that the transfers that I'm making recently aren't paying off nearly as handsomely as they had done historically. And feels like the crowd behind me are congregating, ready to strike.
Absolutely, I'm in that crowd, and it's incredibly congested. There's new names popping up in and out of the top 10 all the time. It's very, very nerve wracking. We're all incredibly low on transfers. Let's just have a quick look at that first. Could someone in the chat please just confirm they can hear us both? We just had a dead stream, so if someone could just confirm they can hear us both, we will carry on. But yeah, looking at the average transfers that came out last Friday, I think they reduced by 40% the week before, and they've just reduced by another 50% in the last few days. It's absolutely incredible, really. So the top 10 went down from 5.4 to just 2.8 transfers left on average. Top 100 were down from 5 to 2.6. Top 1,000, 5.3 to 3.2. Top 5,000, 5.6 to 3.9. Yes, thanks to Glenn and Jason in the chat who have just confirmed that we can hear you, and everyone else. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for that, gents. But yeah, crazy scenes on the transfer front, and it seems to be that people are dead ending their teams now. I know I am. Every transfer I make, there's no more luxury transfers, right? It's transfers till the death. Is that kind of how you're feeling at the moment?
Yeah, and I know that some people are holding a few back, and I've talked about before, but injuries at the end of the season are usually season enders rather than try and rush someone back for the last game. But there's been a lot of talk about doing 3-for-1s at the end of the season, and I didn't realise until I looked today, but Man City's team sheet isn't available on that Sunday. I don't know that I'd be removing a Kane or a Salah when they both got really good final day fixtures for a Man City asset who is probably going to play 2 out of 3 at best. Yeah. And I'm obviously rule Haaland out of that, but then everyone's going to have Haaland anyway, so you're not going to be doing your 3-for-1 there. I personally don't see the appeal in it, knowing that Man City's busted everybody this season at some point in time as well, right?
Haven't they just? Second time burnt by Edison for me. So on overhaul, I know you got Pope, didn't you? And I got Edison. And Pope absolutely blitzed Edison's score. And Edison seems to be doing it again. So brought him back in for 3 games, conceded in the 2. And the one they keep a clean sheet, he didn't start. So I was pretty glad yesterday as a kind of multiple Man City owner that Arsenal won. Because hopefully Man City will continue to play their strongest team now almost to the end of the season. But yeah, these Man City assets just sting, don't they? Stones has rested obviously this weekend. Rodri rested this weekend as well. And who knows week to week, right? Yeah. Diaz as well. Ake looks like he's got another injury. It's just so tough to predict what's going to happen with them. So Brighton are interesting. Obviously, we've just seen Solly March has been benched this afternoon, which is very frustrating again for owners. Do you think he's been dropped, and and De Zerbi will just continue to kind of rotate his players, or do you think he's been dropped because of his form, or have you got any thoughts on that?
I don't think he's played particularly badly. I don't think it's a form thing.
Yeah,
he got a knock in one of the games. He didn't come off in the FA Cup game against Man United. So there could be some lingering effects of that. I don't think it's a form thing. And they brought him on for 25 minutes, half an hour in the last game as well. I just think we're going to see a lot of rotation with Brighton, particularly if. Well, it doesn't even matter that there's nothing to play for. De Zerbi seems confident in the players that he's bringing in. I think that those with defensive assets outside the Dunks maybe being a little bit, I wouldn't say lucky because you brought them in on this basis, but if Veltman had been fit and Tariq Lamptey's out injured as well.
Mm.
I think we would have seen a bit more rotation in defence as well. But yeah, I don't think I can't. There's 6 games now, including today's. I don't think anyone bar maybe Dunk, maybe Estupinan. I could even see like Sanchez getting the last game of the season, because it'd be his like swan song before what you would expect. A lot of Premier League teams have got goalkeeping problems this season, and Sanchez being second choice at Brighton, not first choice, you could perhaps see a transfer there this summer.
So following today, there's only 10 game days left. It's getting, it feels for me, we've been talking about, we're coming towards the end, but I think for me now, the end is definitely in sight, with lots of teams just having 3 fixtures left till the end of the season. The end is definitely in sight, isn't it? Looking at the fixture, Brighton have obviously got 6, and while that, is really good on paper for Brighton assets, I do agree with you. I can't see them playing their whole team all the time. Now, obviously Martin's been dropped. I can probably see McAllister, Mitoma, maybe Estupinian even, and others getting rested as well. So it's not out of those 6 fixtures. I would expect most of them to play 4, maybe 5. I think Dunk, for example, as you say, will probably play all 6. But other than that, it's going to be a tough one there. Newcastle played yesterday. Saw a few people brought a Newcastle forward yesterday. Obviously, they disappointed, but their next, all 4 games left: away to Leeds, home to Brighton, home to Leicester, away to Chelsea. You would probably expect them to do well in most of those games, the attackers there. We have had some questions around Isaac or Wilson, which is interesting. What's your current take on that debate?
Isaac could probably get more minutes, I would suggest, in the season, albeit Longstaff looks like he's visiting a consultant this week for Newcastle, and he was the linchpin to that formation that played just one up front. So there's definitely options on how that go about. I think Isaac will get the most minutes. I think when the two play, Wilson tends to be more involved in higher expected goals. I actually ran the player comparison yesterday through the Fantasy Hub player comparison tool, and it showed that Wilson had a bigger goal threat, and Isaac had a better goal expected assists when the two play. But I think Isaac will get more minutes, but I do think that both are viable options. I'm not as keen on going early on the Brighton game next Thursday. I'd be more keen waiting for the Leicester game. Like, Leicester look atrocious defensively, and picking up the forward that starts on Monday the 22nd, to me, looks like the prime time to make the move, knowing what you're getting.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Is there a double up an option at all, do you think? Or is it, obviously Haaland and Kane, you'd have to drop one of those, but...
it would take a lot of transfers, knowing that I wouldn't really want to be going without Haaland or Kane on the last day of the season. Kane's got Leeds, hasn't he? So that's his first fixture. Salah's got Southampton as well. So I know Salah's a midfielder in Sky, but again, that was more in reference to that 3-for-1 type move towards the end. I don't know that I'd be moving any of them on around that time.
Agreed. Welcome to everyone in the chat. Thanks for joining us this afternoon at this very, very odd time in the middle of a game week. Johnny White is in. Jason Harry, Gary Plant, Stephen Murray Bruce, Matt Woolley, Matt Donald, FPL Sparta, Colin Johnston as well. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us, guys. Really, really appreciate it. What's your, in terms of the remaining schedule now, Paul, we've touched on Brighton there. In terms of teams like Man United, who've obviously got a very, very favourable run in as well on paper, even though they don't look on form, and Man City and stuff. Where do you think the points are? Where do you think should be kind of aiming those last 2 or 2.8 sort of transfers? What's your thinking?
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat myself over and over in the Brighton fixture volume and City fixture volume, etc. points. So 2 teams that interest me a bit. You just mentioned Man United there. The problem Man United's got 3 home fixtures in the next 4. They've been woefully out of form recently, but they've went through a series of away matches when we know that at home they're much, much stronger at Old Trafford. So I think Bruno, he's going to play all 4 games. Could you say that about any Man City asset?
Yeah.
They've got 4 games, and there's a lot of talk about moving on to Man City assets. I'd be more keen to try and get Bruno on it. If an injury came up, so that you're not losing the game advance and you could do the move early. And similarly, Arsenal, albeit this is a bit more tricky because they play on the Sunday, and I don't know that there's many players from many teams on the Saturday that I'd want to get rid of, but Odegaard, Martinelli now I think plays all 3. Saka plays all 3. Would I rather have 3 games from a starting Arsenal forward that I don't need to worry too much about team sheets, or would I rather have 4 from like a Man City defence where do they play 2? Do they play 2 out of 4? They can't keep clean sheets anyway. I know that they start on a higher ceiling with passing. I just think that we've talked about it before, like getting Man City players in, it makes sense, fixture volume, but maybe recalibrating how I'd use transfers if I had an abundance of transfers just now. That you're getting 3 and 4 games out of those players. Maybe I'd rather that than potentially a 4 or 5 out of 6 for Brighton, when Brighton's fixtures after today are particularly difficult as well, and they've got Southampton at home, which is a good fixture, but and they can score and keep clean sheets against anybody, but the fixtures don't look as great on paper.
No, I agree. I was looking. You would expect them to keep a clean sheet today. I think against Everton. I think if they concede, it would probably be a bit of a surprise. Even though Everton have only slightly improved and they started scoring, and they're obviously scrapping for their lives. But you would expect them to concede away to Arsenal.
Everton are odds on to score.
Odds on to score. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but only marginally. I think it's more a coin flip.
Yeah. Away to Arsenal on Sunday, you'd probably expect Arsenal to score. Away to Newcastle, you expect Newcastle to score, and then home to Southampton, which is obviously a really good one defensively. But then they've got City, and then away to Villa at the end, which again you probably expect them to concede in both of those. So yeah, probably 2 of the 6 you can maybe expect clean sheets, but the other 4 are quite tough. So yeah, it's interesting point you're making. It goes back all the time, doesn't it? Ian Parron is a massive sort of advocate of you can never have too many transfers back at the end. Obviously, you have to use your transfers to get yourself into a position. There's no point having loads of transfers and not being kind of where you want to be. But it's interesting now how we were all like quick jump off Arsenal, and now all of a sudden circumstances potentially dictate that Arsenal options could probably be the better options than what others were kind of talking about. So yeah, it's really interesting. I just want to ask you, Paul, just while we're talking about kind of transfer count and stuff. I've been reflecting a bit kind of over the weekend, how I've used mine and my position and kind of where I am and if I was happy or not. And I think my quick summary of my season, I've used almost all of them now, right? I've got hardly any left, but I think my quick summary of my season would be that I don't look back on any one transfer. I don't think this year. I've probably forgotten a few, right? But regretted them the way I have in previous years. Obviously, a lot of them haven't paid off how you'd expected, right? But they're just outcomes against decisions then, aren't they? But in terms of yourself, obviously sitting for first and second, how would you assess your performance this season? Because obviously the key thing in fantasy, especially in this sort of format, is the balancing of transfers against your rank to get to where you want to be. That's the most important thing in the whole game, right? How would you assess kind of how you've done?
I think I have done really well with my transfers that I made. I've balanced quite a bit of luck to get where I was, but at the same time, moves that I wouldn't have traditionally done, like the Martinelli move. I think I've taken some notes so that when we do a retrospective pod at the end of the season, like what's my I've got more highs, much more highs than I have lows this season. And even if I get caught now, which there's a good chance, there's a lot of teams, as I say, congregating behind now. If I get caught now, I'm the same as you. I don't have many regrets in terms of how I played. That Martinelli move, I don't usually make that in normal seasons, and it paid off handsomely. So even if over the last few weeks I've made transfers and they've not done well at all, Maddison and a couple others in there. But do I regret making them? No, because I just got on I said the wrong side of luck or the right side of luck previously, but those are the kind of moves that I would always make anyway. So I just think back, like butterfly effect. I wouldn't be, if I hadn't played the transfers as aggressively as I had to now, I probably wouldn't be first. So yeah, I'm at peace. In terms of my transfer usage, I don't think that there's much that I would take away and learn from this season, but I have taken away things from previous seasons to get to where I am now. Around that, don't use 2 transfers for 1 player, like type situation.
Yeah, I think the key difference I've noticed in your game this year has been you've acted slightly out of character on certain occasions to be aggressive and try and not trying to plan too far ahead, but almost take a bit more of what's in front of you. You know, when you had that fixture congestion for Arsenal, for example, I think normally, an Arsenal sort of pylon for a player, of your, of how you play would maybe be, sort of 3 or 4, but it was like 6 or 7 almost, wasn't it? And I think that slightly more aggressive play, the whole amount of transfer at the start, just getting yourself just tick along, stay in the hunt, stay in the game, and then attack at the right time when that pylon was there. I think I noticed that, obviously our teams have been, I say, reasonably similar. We still got some different players. I think I've noticed when the leaderboard updates, we still got different players, but I think the core element of our team is reasonably similar. Probably the same 7 or 8 for kind of most of the season. But yeah, I definitely noticed that when I was aggressive and I was expected to jump ahead of you, you stayed ahead of me, and I was really surprised because normally I normally go ahead of you, and then you normally just slowly climb back as you kind of hold your transfers back. But your timing of them, I personally think the extra 10 transfers for me this season has been a godsend. I think it's played right into my hands into the way I play. And it's probably allowed yourself to just play with a little bit more freedom you normally would. In terms of, it's 40, is that just a little bit more restriction on if you'd go for something or not? But
and I found a few times this season that I've made a move when a player's been at low ownership, and then like 2 weeks later the ownership's at 70 or 80%, and getting that 2 weeks before it becomes the template. Because at numerous points of season, there's a question or a remark on one of the threads on this pod for today as well, on Twitter threads, about like it being templated, but the key is to get on the new template quicker than anybody else, in my opinion. And then when you're on the template, you've benefited from being there early.
Yeah, agree. Let's just have a look at the fixtures for the coming weekend. Obviously, we've passed the deadline now for today, so there's not much point in previewing today. But the next games are on Saturday, and we've got Leeds and Newcastle early doors. Going to be interesting to see, because we see the lineups, if it's Isaac or Wilson, whether anyone will make some moves on that day. Because obviously that Leeds fixture at the moment is really decent. Even though I would say I thought Leeds were, even though Man City's XG was probably pretty high, Haaland at the bar, at the post, and everything except score. I think they defend. I think they showed a lot more resilience than they've shown previously. So I don't expect that to be a walk in the park for Newcastle, maybe as it would have been a couple of weeks ago. Southampton and Fulham, United, Wolves, Palace and Bournemouth, Chelsea and Forest, Villa and Spurs. No 5:30 game. Interestingly, in that one, captain for Saturday, I think probably Rashford or Kane would be the default sort of pick. What's you thinking?
Yeah, I just think if the Man United game was an away fixture, this would be a much harder decision for me, and I'd probably side more with Kane. But I'm going to go with, I think Rashford's a standout captain for there. Just this was the home time. I say standout again. If you're chasing a bit, Isaac or Wilson, whoever starts through the middle for Newcastle, could be a nice alternative. I just think that Man United's home form gets them through, and Rashford captaincy. based on his ownership as well, is the most sensible play to make.
Glenn Murray's just put Scamacca in the chat. Any idea why? No idea why he put Scamacca. Was he thinking of? No idea. I don't know if he's been on the Buckfast a bit early. Bank holiday Buckfast. Looking at Sunday, Everton play Man City, Brentford, West Ham, and then Arsenal, Brighton is to 4:30. You'd probably guess Haaland captain, assuming he starts against Everton. Gets his alliance again, which is brilliant. Any thoughts here? Any kind of transfers in or anything? Or
And I'd mentioned Arsenal earlier on. As I say, I just don't know who you'd come off unless you've held Ollie Watkins to this point in time, or an Enzo Fernandez, or someone. So this possibly probably a non-fantasy related point, but I'm really looking forward to that Arsenal Brighton game on Sunday. I think it'll be a really good watch. I don't have an English team, so I don't side with anyone. And from a fantasy perspective, I think I'll probably be holding an average amount of Brighton players. Really interesting to see how that game plays out.
Yeah, same. Monday, 15th of May, Leicester against Liverpool. I think probably fair to say Salah will be the best captain of the year, especially given Leicester have just conceded 5. But Trent seems to be doing the bins at the moment for owners, didn't he? He was that change in position for him, as he's really thrived, haven't he? And I can't see that changing.
Yeah, less like as poor as Leicester are defensively, they're good going forward.
They are.
Obviously scored 2 against Everton, missed a penalty, and then they scored 3 against Fulham. I was getting beat today
and missed a penalty.
And missed a penalty. So yeah, I don't know that I would be going for a defensive asset for that reason only. If it was a home tie and they were against a team that perhaps doesn't play on the counter as much, then I would possibly consider a defender over Salah. But it seems like an obvious one to me. Thursday will be interesting.
I was just going to say another fantastic match.
And we'll be podding before then. But Newcastle Brighton. So I know a lot of people are talking about bringing in a Newcastle forward here, and I mentioned earlier on that it wouldn't be this game that I'd be bringing him in for, because I'd want the differential captaincy the following week when
he's Leicester.
I still fancy Dunk to pick up passing bonus in this game. Potentially not, but I think that I don't think a captain and a Brighton player in this fixture is absurd. Whereas when it comes to the following weeks, based on how poor Leicester are defensively on that Monday night, I'd be wanting to make sure that the centre forward that I was picking was starting, so that I could captain him that game. Yeah,
interesting there. Newcastle and Brighton, I can agree with that. That Arsenal Brighton game is going to be brilliant, but I also think Newcastle and Brighton is as well. Isn't it? So it's 2 really tough games for Brighton.
It's everyone in Brighton.
Yeah, it is. It is at the moment.
You've got Man City. You've got Man City.
Man City and Brighton the following week is going to be a barnstorm again. It's going to be a really good game. Good stuff. Let's.
Okay, I was going to ask you.
Oh yeah, go on.
Another football-related, non-fantasy-related question, if we're allowed to go kind of sidetrack. David Moyes at West Ham. I know I'm a Scot, and he's a Scot. I think he, over the course of this season, has taken a ridiculous amount of stick from West Ham fans, and what do you think, deservedly so? Like, I know that they were in the relegation zone at points this season.
I think it was deservedly so. I think West Ham have got some fabulous players all over the pitch, and I think they were a shambles for 2/3 of the season, and I think he deserved the stick he got. But more recently, the players have stepped up, and put in some good performances and been hard to beat. I do think, looking at their team on paper, they should be nowhere near that relegation zone. Bear in mind what they've done in the previous few years as well. That's my hot take. What do you think? Or do you think it's a bit undeserved? Or
I don't know. I'm not having a go at fans and people. I don't go and watch them every week, so it's no. I always just think I think he's a great manager. I had a couple of blips.
Yeah.
Don't talk too much about Man United job, and but yeah, I think he's a great manager.
I do.
He's like one of those ones that if you feel like you put the trust in him longer term, that if he gets himself into a hole, he'll dig you out. I remember a few times at Everton, like they had in his long successful spell, there was a couple of seasons where they had FA seasons as well. I think perhaps when they were balancing Europe with Premier League as well.
I went to watch him a couple of months back down at Spurs, and they were dire. They were standing off the ball. They were standing kind of off the man. They were so passive, and they didn't look like scoring. And Spurs weren't even playing well either at that point. So from what I saw live on that day, they were pretty dire. But they have improved since then, I would say. And Paqueta is really starting to come in his own. I think he's going to be some player. His touch and his eye and his vision look really, really good. So I think he's going to be in the next 2 years. Yeah,
they were excellent yesterday as well. Like really, really good.
It's mad how a bit of intensity can just change the whole dynamic and performance of the team. And Declan Rice, I mean, what a player he is. Don't get me wrong. I've always thought he's a very good player, but yesterday in particular, I think I realised just how good he actually is. He's a phenomenal footballer. He's he's got the potential to be one of the best in the world. I think he's really, really good. Let's have a look at a few questions. So Martin Beasley asked, very straightforward, Isaac or Wilson. So I think it's probably fair to say that when Wilson played, he's probably got the better better expected points and things, but we'd probably expect Isaac to get a few more minutes. I think the problem with Wilson as well is that he is injury prone, right? This is the thing with him. So, but yeah, if we are waiting till next week, that Leicester game, he's only got to stay fit for one game, and then is it away to Chelsea? I want to say last match I see, which is which even that is a pretty decent match as well. So I think if you're going early, I personally think Isaac, but I think if you're hanging on till that Leicester game, whoever's basically starting up front would be the one for me. Ian Parrin, with the average transfer cap between 2 and 3, who do you think will be the most transferred players into the rest of the season? So he suggests something like Brighton midfielder today, Newcastle attacker Saturday or next Thursday, and Man City attacker a week on Sunday. Do you agree with that? I think I'd agree with the first two.
All of those things all of those things have been touted like among like threads on Twitter and stuff like that, and mentioned probably on this pod and Planet FPL's pod as well. And I think that's probably right. But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm a little bit cooler on two of those things for the reasons I've mentioned. The Newcastle one, I think that I would personally wait, whether I do it or not myself, whether I do the Newcastle forward in myself, would be Monday the 22nd of May, just so that I know who I'm bringing in starts. And the Man City one, I just don't know that who I'd be taking out, who plays on the. I wouldn't be so it's Spurs, Brentford, Bournemouth, Man United, Fulham, Crystal Palace, Liverpool, Villa, Wolves, Everton, Forest, Arsenal. Like a 3-for-1 from Arsenal. I'm thinking of who's still highly owned. When Arsenal play Wolves on the last day of the season at home, I don't know that I'd take out the Arsenal player. Maybe Kanate, if I owned Kanate at that point, I'd potentially take him out for 3-for-1, knowing that it might be a 2-for-1 for Man City. What other fixture? I still think that each Brighton point, because they've got maximum games, that it could be adding another Brighton player in at each point. If there was thoughts that Webster would keep his spot at centre half, I think that he'd be much higher owned than what he is. He's only getting held down by the fact that he was getting rotated with Colwell over time as well.
Yep, agree. Simon Baldock asks if we'll be doing Nip and a Half podcast this week. We will be. For those watching who have never heard of it, if you go onto Spotify, go into Nip and a Half podcast. Paul and I chat most weeks, not every week, but most weeks, about our sort of ranks and plans and everything across all fantasy formats. That's Sky, Telegraph, Sun Dream Team, and FPL as well. And we're in a bit of a competition. It was very close. I don't know how close it is now, but Paul was ahead over the whole season by about 37 points. He's not giving anything away now, I can see. But if you do want to know what happens,
like getting surprise online.
I do. I do have his good news. But listen to the podcast. Listen to the podcast. Nip and a Half on Spotify, anyway. Julian says, Mourinho, he took a slight rank hit for having no Arsenal. Would you go back in for the last 3 games? So we mentioned this earlier. What do you think, Paul?
I think there's worse ways to use transfers. Depends how many you've got. If you've got like 3 or 4, all for me, it depends on who you're taking out, and I don't know that there's many options on the Saturday. That maybe Trippier, if you know that you're going to captain, like you're not going to captain him, you're going to captain a Newcastle forward. But again, the players that I kind of listed, I would take out Watkins if I still owned, Enzo Fernandez perhaps, even if someone's still holding on to like Eze from Crystal Palace. There's just not many players on the Saturday that play that I would move on. So you're going to be likely taking out someone that is yet to play in that game week, unless you've got an injured player. And then if that's the case, then yeah, I think it's a great move. And same with Bruno.
Colin Johnston says, been burning transfers like wildfire last 3 weeks, about 10, no luck whatsoever. City wrong choices, poor captains, all gone bit dead-ended to the season. Any good options left? So Paul, well, he's just mentioned he thinks, going back in on Arsenal, potentially. The Brighton assets, the Man City ones are hard to call in a Newcastle forward, especially on that Leicester day. Whoever starts that day, assuming that people will be down to their last transfer probably on that Leicester day, or have none left anyway. If Wilson or Isaac or both of them start up front, the way Newcastle are playing, the way Leicester are defending, that could be a massive swing in its own right, couldn't it?
And I think Wilson will be the wild card in that if he starts that game, he's going to be lower on. So if you're looking for push for rank, maybe people would have went on Isaac early, or they'll be out of transfers. And I think that's it's a really good option, but whether it pays off or not, and whether he does start, I don't know.
Arthur Sixpence, the cancelled games caused by the Queen's passing made for an interesting tortoise and hare transfer scenario this year. But do you think we should have 50 to play with again next season? What do you think, Paul, on the 50?
I was dead against the 50, and as you've mentioned earlier on, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know that it does, like, if it does or doesn't form a template more so than seasons with 40, because people can be aggressive to get to the template quicker and burn through transfers. I can't decide.
But then it's a tortoise thing, right? Where it's all very well getting to the template and burning through, but now the people with no transfers left will just be dropping off, right? So this is the business. This is the money end of the season. Is keeping on top of it now, keeping your team in good shape now.
As long as they keep one overhaul.
Yes, I completely agree.
Mid-season overhaul, then 50 is fine, I think.
I think, I know it may be fairly obvious that it may sound fairly obvious considering how well our season's gone, how well my season has gone. But I have not enjoyed a fantasy season more ever in any format than I have this season. Playing the game. I feel like I've had I feel there's been a lot of I feel there's been just enough flexibility to be able to take some exciting punts, as well as, because I think when you got 40, normally the 40 there's not much room to maneuver, because you only get a transfer a week on average, don't you? You get like one a week. It's like your hygiene transfer. You move on to your Monday captain, and then you move on to your whatever and get to Haaland. There's not any kind of any space to have just a little bit of fun and either go all in on a team or take a couple of punts. Whereas I think those extra 10 for me this season have really meant you can be incredibly aggressive with the way you play, which for me is a really fun part of the game. Not just making the hygiene transfer that everyone else is making. And I've not enjoyed a fantasy season more in any format. I know that may sound a bit obvious because I've had a good season, but I've finished high in other games and I've enjoyed this one much more, I think. Brookie, if you still had Raya, is Raya to steal a no-brainer, considering Brighton have double the fixture of Brentford left?
I DM'd them.
And said yes, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, because the deadline is gone now. And Warren finally asks, would you upgrade Kanate to Trent or swap Alisson to De Gea for extra games to cover high-ish Man United EO? Interesting one there.
don't know that I would do either of those. I would
definitely not keen on the first one. A sideways move, Canate to Trent. Yeah, I'm not that thing on the other one either, and it's because both Liverpool and United play on the same days on the final 2 days. You're not getting any real fixture gain either. I know you get the overall 4 for 3, but I think there's more upside elsewhere, Warren. Like that Newcastle striker move. If you got that plan anyway, double up on the Newcastle forwards, for example, or do something where maybe there's a lot more upside rather than just sideways moves. Is my opinion.
If you had to do one of those, what would you do?
Probably the keeper move, just for the extra fixture, but that's more it.
Yeah, I think I would do the keeper move as well, and you get this could work in the opposite way, because you get, if Rashford for whatever reason didn't play against Chelsea on the Thursday at the end of the season, that you've got backup. But then I would say that the Liverpool player, you've got backup if Salah doesn't play against Leicester as well. So I'd make the keeper move out of those two things, out of those two options. But yeah, I don't think I would do either.
Agree. And that's for all the questions. Thank you so much to those who have sent them in this week. Looking at the overall leaderboard, obviously this is going to change in 2 minutes because the Brighton game is going to kick off. But as it stands, Paul is top of the leaderboard, 3296. His second team is second, but only just 3278. Dale Pointer, who's been flying up the table, is in third, 3275. So 21 points behind Paul's first team. John Donnelly and John Ashworth, both of them in the last week, have overtaken me and others as well, and have flown at the table. So very, very well played to both Johns there. John Donnelly 3269, John Ashworth 3268. I'm on 3258. So I feel it's funny because I'm still only, where am I? I'm 40 points off your top team now, Paul. What am I? 20 points off your second. So I feel like I've had a massive drop, but it's just because I think it's just so congested around that area, around in between Dale and like 20th. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Apologies,
because other people have been flying up and getting close to you.
They have. So I'm in sixth. David Baxter, 2 points behind me in 7th, 3256. Jirong Tang, who has been yo-yoing all the way up and all the way down and all the way up and all the way down again, is currently 8th, 3249. Nathan Ayadwick, who I think is fairly new in the top 10, 3246. And Thomas Lovell in for a penny, 3242. So it's incredibly congested between, I think, as I say, all the way from 3rd to about like 20th or something is really, really close. So very, very well played there, everyone. Four Nations League. Liam's team's 3076 is in 6th place overall. Dan Cox 3080, Ian Parrin 3174, and then the top 3, myself in 3rd, Paul 3rd, 2nd. I think it's probably fair to say, Paul, that the trophy will be going north of the border. It's probably fair to say now. I think we're getting a bit tight. I'm struggling to see where I'm going to gain that amount of points. It's going to take something pretty special. So I still have to decide whether it was my final transfer or two on going for something a bit wild just to try and go a bit nuts and go for it. But we'll see.
I think if you thought you were like, this is my synopsis, right? You could tell me. I think if you thought that you were closer to me and you weren't going to jeopardise, because I know you're doing well in cash leagues and stuff. I've said this to you before, actually, on air as well. I think is that if you were closer to me, and I know that winning the game, like there's a higher upside to winning the game than there is to dropping down from those cash leagues. But I think if the gap was closer, you might consider going like rogue. But yeah, I don't think you will.
I'm not sure. I'll see. Like my whole I'm playing at the moment. As it stands, as I say, that I'm not Hail Marying yet because it's the wrong time. I said this weeks ago. Like my primary thing at the moment is just to keep a solid team, keep ahead of the curve, as much as I can, and just keep it solid, and hopefully get to a point where everyone else sort of runs out and I see some kind of opportunity. It could even be on the final day. It could be on the Thursday. It could be the previous Monday. If there's an opportunity for a Hail Mary at that point, I could do it. But I'm not jeopardizing my whole season this early. Just try and do it. So yeah, that's where I am anyway. And the FFH Members League, 10th place, Shane White, 3209. 9th place, last year's winner, Matt Wisdish, 3216. Keir McKenna, 3217. Shane White again, 3219. Dean Hicks, 3223. Niall Murphy, 3226. Brian McCauley, 3241. David Baxter, 3256. I'm second. And then Dale is top of that, 3275. Don't forget, I think it's I want to say a £300 first prize for that one as well. Paul, you didn't enter this one. You didn't enter the FFH Members League. You would probably have cleaned up in this one as well as you had. But yeah, next season, mate.
As I say, I applaud for them. I would just give the money back. So
you the one season you've had, a ridiculously good season, you would have cleaned up in probably most of the money leagues and stuff. And
I didn't join those cash leagues because I got mixed up on the days because the website had said the 30th and I had put a calendar note to join the 31st because that was what I would normally done most seasons. And then somebody had mentioned that you could actually enter on the 31st and now.
Unbelievable.
I mean, I wasn't doing particularly well at that point, so.
That is it from us for this week. Just 2 left after this one, Paul. Well, 2 previews anyway. As you say, we will do some kind of wrap-up pod as well, and say we're pretty hopeful as well of doing a mashup pod with Planet FPL as well, which would be absolutely fantastic if we can get that going. But as usual, thank you to everyone for watching and listening. Your continued support is much, much appreciated. Thank you for joining us on this Bank Holiday Monday. And thank you, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty, 1 MCANULTY.
And you can also...
Everton's just scored in the first minute, by the way, against Brighton.
You're joking.
No.
Everton have scored. Brighton clean sheet dumped in the first minute. Yeah. Are you happy with that, Paul? Judging, you've got little smell.
I've got dunk captain, but I feel that more people around me have got more Brighton defence than me. So yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Who scored for Everton?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not. There's just come up notification.
Decore, first minute, unbelievable. That is massive. That is absolutely massive. Interesting stuff. On that bombshell, yeah.
Spoiler.
Just ruined it for everyone. Yes, we also record, you mentioned earlier, Nip and Half podcast. We will be recording it straight after this. Thank you so much, Paul. No, I've said that already. I'm all flustered now due to the Brighton clean sheet bust after one minute to Corey. There's no like VAR or anything, is there? Let's have a quick look just before we.
Calvert Lewin assist has come through as well, so they've done enough time to put that in.
Who got the assist? Calvert Lewin assist. Wow, yeah. 32 seconds. Unbelievable. Glenn said it was Dunk's fault, apparently. Yes. Good old Captain Dunk. My handle on Twitter is at @FFH_Fergi. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions and leave some comments. We'll be back next week, looking ahead to Sky Game Week 42, which will be our penultimate preview pod of the season. Hard to believe how quick it's come round. Absolutely incredible. Have a great week and weekend all, and goodbye for now.